Over the years, there have been a number of sports-related game shows that have proved popular with UK audiences. One of the most successful was Bullseye, which ran for 14 series in its original run through the 80s and 90s, followed by a number of reboots, the most recent of which at the time of writing was the 2024 Christmas special. The BBC tried out a golf-themed game show in 1996 with Full Swing, hosted by Jimmy Tarbuck, but this only lasted for 8 episodes. There was also the less successful Ice Warriors on ITV in 1998, which was essentially gladiators on ice, and a show that is proving to be one of the most elusive hidden game show treasures of all time, as full episodes are impossible to come by, and trust me, I know, as I've been hunting for full episodes of this for years. If anyone has any leads on where to find episodes of this, please do let me know. But in 1991, the BBC introduced a brand new snooker game show that would go on to be one of the most successful game shows of the 90s, Big Break. Hosted by comedian Jim Davidson and snooker legend John Virgo, the show blended snooker, competition, general knowledge, and light-hearted entertainment to create a truly unique game show which became one of the most popular shows of the decade. Running for more than 10 years, Big Break brought some of the biggest names in snooker onto mainstream TV, helping to spread the sport to a wider audience and becoming an iconic part of 90s television. And in this video, we're taking a deep dive into the story of Big Break, exploring its origins, its format, and some of its most memorable moments that cemented its place in British game show history. Before we get started, you can show your support for the channel by hitting that subscribe button and giving the video a thumbs up. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Wouldn't be fair or right. I'm gonna be snookering you tonight.
The story of Big Break's origins is quite fascinating to say the least. The first idea of a snooker-related game show was thought of by comedian and actor Mike Kemp, who at the time was an avid snooker player. After mentioning the idea to a number of friends, the only person who seemed interested, who had even come up with a similar idea himself, was minicab driver Roger Metcalf. Roger and Mike had met a few years prior and had discussed a number of different ideas together, and with their combined effort they came up with a concept called the Big Break, and eventually were able to get television executive Terry Mardell interested. Mardell had previously developed the concept of Bob's Full House and had good connections within the business. Kemp and Metcalf then met with Mardell in May 1987 to pitch the idea to him, but Mardell dismissed it as being too complicated, would take far too long, and would be too expensive to produce. However, Mardell agreed to help them continue to develop the concept, and after a few changes to the format, the following month the three of them went to King's Cross Snooker Club in London to try out the format in practice. The presentation to the BBC was then made on the 26th of June 1987 at King's Cross, and the BBC representatives were sufficiently interested to agree to have rehearsals at the BBC's Acton studios in October 1987. However, from around this time, Roger Metcalf was excluded from contributing to the development of the show. This was handled by Kemp and Mardell. Over the course of the next few years, the show went into development before broadcasting its first full series in 1991. 2 years into the show's life, however, in 1993, Roger Metcalf issued legal proceedings against Mardell, his company, Kemp, and the BBC for copyright infringement and breach of confidence. What followed over the next few years was a very complicated series of legal events, eventually resulting in Metcalf winning the case and being given credit as a creator of the show. Metcalf was awarded damages as well as a 1/3 share of income from the show. This addition of Metcalf as a creator of the show can be seen in the show's end credits, as originally only Mike Kemp and Terry Mardell are listed as the creators, but from around late 1998 we can see that Roger Metcalf's name has been added to this list. This legal battle ultimately secured Metcalf's official recognition as a creator of the show after a long and complex dispute. Going back to the show's early development at the BBC, a pilot episode of the show was produced in 1989 with comedian Mike Reed as host and referee Len Ganley alongside him, offering a first glimpse into how Big Break might take shape. Firstly, the show's theme music for this pilot was completely different and is actually quite good. The format of this pilot was essentially identical to what the main show would use, namely the rounds Red Hot, Pocket Money and Make or Break, but with a few small differences, and there were 3 world champions playing for the contestants: 1985 champion Dennis Taylor, 86 champion Joe Johnson, and 6-time world champion Ray Reardon. The BBC could clearly see the potential that Big Break had, and this pilot was successful enough for the show to be commissioned for a full series. Mike Reed and Len Ganley would unfortunately not get the nod to continue fronting the show, with hosting duties being given to comedian Jim Davidson and John Virgo. Now, I know that Davidson is a controversial figure due to various things he's said and done over the years, and that's a discussion in itself. But for the purposes of this video, I'm focusing purely on his role as the host of Big Break. And in that role, he and John Virgo were undeniably a key part of what made the show work. Jim's quick wit, comedic timing, and most importantly his chemistry with John Virgo played a huge role in the show's success. Before we get into talking about the show itself, a quick word on that iconic theme song we all know and love, which goes a little something like this.
It's only a game, so put up a real good fight. I'm gonna be snookering you tonight.
The theme music is called the Snooker Song and was sung by Captain Sensible. However, the song was originally written by Mike Batt for his musical The Hunting of the Snark, which itself is based on a Lewis Carroll poem of the same name written in 1876. I bet you didn't think we'd be going back that far in this video. An absolutely iconic tune and no doubt one of the best game show theme songs of all time. Let's now take a look through the show's decade-long run through the 90s and early 2000s, looking at the show's format, some of the legendary snooker players who took part, and some of the show's most memorable moments. The very first episode of Big Break was broadcast on Tuesday, April 30th, 1991, and this first episode featured Joe Johnson, who had appeared in the pilot episode, Mike Hallett, and a young Stephen Hendry, who at the time had only won 1 of his 7 world championships and was just beginning what would be an 8-year stretch as world number 1. Every series of Big Break followed the same format with a few very minor changes here and there, which you would think would get boring after a while, but with this show that was certainly not the case. Each episode starts with a comedic intro from Davidson and Virgo before we're introduced to the 3 contestants. Davidson would then spend a couple of minutes with each of them, getting to know them a little and having a bit of banter, before each contestant would select a coloured snooker ball at random, a red, blue or yellow ball. Each ball would correspond to one of the professional players waiting in the wings to join the contestant for their run through the show. Over the course of Big Break's entire run, there were precisely 100 players who appeared on the show, and the player with the most appearances was Dennis Taylor, who appeared in a total of 28 episodes. One of my favourite players has always been Jimmy White, and he even got his own theme music to walk out to, Jimmy Jimmy by the Undertones. After all 3 players have been introduced, we go into the first game called Red Hot. In this game, each contestant is asked 3 questions, which will determine how much time their snooker player has to pot as many of the 10 red balls as they possibly can. In the early series of the show, players were given 10 seconds and each correct answer would add an additional 10 seconds to this time. But in later series, this was changed to players having 40 seconds, from which they would lose 5 seconds for each incorrect answer. With the questions answered, the player would then break off and their timer would start the next time they struck the cue ball. The team with the lowest score from this round would be eliminated.
Mark Davis scores 7!
The contestant who was eliminated in this first round would then get the opportunity to win a consolation prize by recreating Virgo's trick shot. These trick shots were invariably quite straightforward and would be automatic if they followed Virgo's directions correctly. And although the consolation prize wasn't anything spectacular, it was still a nice touch to send them away with something. There were some particularly hilarious moments when Virgo's foolproof trick shot didn't go according to plan. These trick shot segments were popular enough for the BBC to produce some trick shot special episodes. There were a total of 9 of these episodes made, and they are excellent viewing. My favourite was perhaps this one where we see the first few minutes leading up to Michael Aspel surprising JV with his This Is Your Life book. Highly recommend checking out these episodes. The second round was called Pocket Money, in which each contestant's player would play a standard game of snooker but with only 6 reds. Each ball potted on the table would be worth a cash amount. Reds were worth £10, yellow £20, green £30, etc., up to the black, which was worth £70, and there was also a chance to double the value of the colours if they were potted into their corresponding pocket. So, for example, potting the black ball into the black pocket would double its value to 140. If a shot was missed, the player's contestant would have to answer a question correctly from a category chosen based on the colour of the ball that was missed. The red questions were pot luck, meaning general knowledge, yellow questions were based on history, green questions were for music, brown was the geography category, blue questions were all about people, pink was sport, and the black category was called screen, which usually meant questions on TV or film. The record for the highest ever score on Pocket Money was achieved by Tony Knowles with a total of £580, which was achieved during Series 6, although I wasn't able to find this episode. The lowest scoring contestant from this round would be eliminated but would still keep the total money scored during Pocket Money, and the winning contestant would go through to the final round, Make or Break. First, the player would break off with another frame of snooker with 6 reds. Then their contestant would have 90 seconds to answer 5 questions, with each question they get right allowing the player to remove 1 red from the table. Using whatever time was remaining from the 90 seconds after the questions were answered, it was then up to the player to clear the table according to the usual rules of snooker. Once they reached the coloured balls, this is where the prizes would be won, with the yellow ball awarding the lowest value prize all the way up to the black ball that awarded the Mystery Star Prize, which was usually a holiday somewhere spectacular. If the player didn't pot all the balls, the contestant would go away with whatever prizes had been secured from the colours that were potted, as well as the money they earned from Pocket Money. This was always my favourite round on the show and was a very exciting way to end each episode for sure. As mentioned earlier, every series of Big Break followed this same format, but what made it so great was that it never felt repetitive. Even though the structure remained the same rounds, the same games, the same overall flow, the combination of different contestants, different professional snooker players, and the unique banter between Davidson and Virgo kept things fresh and entertaining week after week. The comedy definitely played a huge role in the success of this show, helping to create a light-hearted and fun atmosphere. Big Break managed to strike the perfect balance between competition and entertainment, ensuring that even though the core format remained unchanged, no 2 episodes ever felt exactly alike. Alongside the main show, between 1995 and 1999, there was also a special version of the show called Stars of the Future, which featured teenage snooker players who were coming up the ranks. And who could forget the Big Break Christmas specials, of which there were 8 between 1991 and 98. The contestants on these episodes were all celebrities, and everyone was dressed up in fancy dress. These are some of the best episodes in the show's run and are definitely well worth a watch. Unfortunately, as Series 10 drew to a close in the summer of 2002, so too did the show's time on our screens. After over 10 years and more than 200 episodes, the show broadcast its final ever episode on Saturday, August 10th, 2002. With snooker still enjoying a dedicated fan base and major tournaments like the World Championship, the UK Championship and the Masters continuing to draw strong viewership, I think there's certainly a case to be made for bringing Big Break back to our screens. The show had a winning formula, combining snooker, trivia and comedy in a way that made it entertaining for both hardcore fans of the sport and casual viewers alike. Snooker remains a staple of UK television, and I feel a revival could help to introduce a new generation to the game while also offering a nostalgic trip for those who grew up watching the original series. With modern production values and updated graphics, a reboot could refresh the format while staying true to the charm that made the original so beloved. A reboot would certainly need 2 new hosts, however, and I wonder who you all think would be great choices to host the show. For me, I could definitely see someone like comedian Mark Watson taking the role of main host, as he's an avid snooker fan with plenty of TV experience and currently presents the Snooker Club podcast with Stephen Hendry. Or the show could go with snooker MC Rob Walker, who has become one of the most recognizable personalities on the snooker tour with the right level of energy, charisma, and knowledge of the sport to be an excellent host. And what about the co-host role? Perhaps there's a player on the tour who would be interested in taking up such a role. I think someone like Dominic Dale would be a great choice. Not only is he a 2-time ranking event winner, but he's also known for his flamboyant personality, sharp sense of humor, and deep knowledge of snooker history. Or what about Ken Doherty? As a former world champion and one of the most respected voices in the game, Ken brings a wealth of snooker knowledge and experience. He's a regular presence in the commentary box where his friendly demeanor and insightful analysis have made him a fan favorite, and his natural charm and ability to explain the game in an entertaining and accessible way would make him a fantastic fit for this co-host role. But who would you choose if the show was to be rebooted? Let me know down in the comments below. As it currently stands, there are no plans to reboot the show, but I hope that changes in the future, as Big Break was one of my all-time favorite game shows, and I truly believe it could work well in the modern era. Whether you're a long-time snooker fan or just someone who remembers watching the show in the 90s, there's still something special about Big Break that made it stand out. Hopefully, one day we'll hear that iconic theme tune again, but until then, at least we still have hundreds of episodes available to rewatch where we can relive all the hilarious moments that made Big Break such a beloved part of 90s television. Thanks for watching, everyone. Those who know me personally know that I'm a huge snooker fan, and so putting this video together was a real joy. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And please stay tuned for more nostalgic deep dives into the sights and sounds of our past. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.